You know, when you think about the greatest teams in the history of sports, a few names always come to mind. And right near the top of that list, you have to put the San Francisco 49ers of the 80s and 90s. This is the story of how they built one of the most incredible dynasties the world has ever seen.
Yeah, pretty much any football fan knows this logo, right? But what's really fascinating is the story behind it. It's a story of heartbreak, sheer genius, and this relentless drive for perfection that literally changed how football is played.
So what was their secret? How does a team go from being, well, a total afterthought to the absolute gold standard of the NFL? That's the question we're going to unpack.
To really get how incredible this dynasty was, we have to rewind the clock a bit. Because for the first 30 years or so, the 49ers story was all about flashes of greatness, but ultimately an empty trophy case.
The team got its start way back in 1946, a real pioneer out on the West Coast. They had some incredible talent in the 50s. They called them the $1 million backfield, and they were always thinking outside the box. By the early 70s, they were really good, winning their division 3 years in a row. But they could just never win the big one. It was always playoff heartbreak, and it always seemed to be at the hands of their biggest rivals, the Dallas Cowboys.
And this is where it all started, Kezar Stadium in San Francisco. This place saw all those early struggles, all that promise that just wasn't quite paying off yet.
And even back then, you could see sparks of that genius. The 49ers were actually the first NFL team to really use the shotgun formation, the one every single team uses now. So they had the ideas, but they were still missing the key ingredients to get to the top.
And then, everything changed. Seriously, a new owner, a genius coach, and a quarterback that, let's be honest, nobody saw coming. These guys were about to flip the script on the entire league.
It all started from the top. The new owner, Eddie DeBartolo Jr., was all about winning, whatever it took. And in 1979, he made maybe the single most important hire in team history, Bill Walsh, a brilliant offensive mind who was coaching at Stanford.
Walsh brought this revolutionary idea with him, something that came to be known as the West Coast offense. The idea was simple but brilliant. Instead of just trying to run the ball or throw deep, you use a bunch of short, quick, accurate passes. It was like death by 1,000 paper cuts. It wore defenses out, created huge mismatches, and let a smart, accurate quarterback just surgically take a team apart. It was a complete game changer.
But every great system needs its quarterback, and Walsh found his guy buried in the third round of the draft, a kid from Notre Dame named Joe Montana. The scouts, they were not impressed. They said his arm was too weak, that he was just lucky to have a good team in college. They had no idea what was coming.
And this was the moment the rest of the NFL should have started paying very close attention. In 1980, the Niners were getting blown out by the Saints, down 35-7 at the half. Montana comes in and leads them all the way back to win. It was the biggest comeback in NFL history at the time. A star was born, and that starting job was his for good.
Okay, so the pieces are all there, right? The coach, the quarterback. Now all they needed was that one single moment to vanquish their rivals and launch them into the stratosphere.
January 10th, 1982, the NFC Championship. And of course, it's against the Dallas Cowboys. The Niners are down by 6, less than a minute left to play. The Super Bowl is hanging in the balance.
After this incredible drive down the field, it all comes down to this one play. Third down. Montana is scrambling for his life, rolls to his right, and just throws one high to the back of the end zone. It almost looks like he's throwing it away. But then, out of nowhere, Dwight Clark leaps up and just snags it with his fingertips. Touchdown. It's now known simply as the catch. And just like that, the Cowboys were finally beaten.
That one play, it wasn't just about winning a game. It was like opening the floodgates. Over the next decade or so, that single catch led to this many championships, 5. From that moment on, for the next 14 seasons, the 49ers were just a machine. They became the team of the 80s, winning 5 Super Bowls in one of the most dominant runs you will ever see in any sport. They weren't just winning, they were setting the standard.
And it wasn't just Montana pulling the strings. The team was stacked. Absolutely loaded with Hall of Fame talent, including this guy, Jerry Rice, a player many still believe is the single greatest to ever play the game. When he joined the team, he took that unstoppable offense to a whole other level.
But here's the thing about dynasties. The hardest part is keeping them going. And for the Niners, that meant making a decision that felt almost impossible. One of the toughest calls in sports history.
It was the debate that tore the fan base in two. Joe Montana, the living legend, the guy who built the dynasty, versus Steve Young, his hungry, incredibly athletic backup. As Montana got older, the team had this impossible choice on its hands, and it turned into the biggest quarterback controversy the league had ever seen.
In the end, they made the tough call. They chose the future and traded an icon, Joe Montana, to Kansas City. I mean, can you imagine the pressure on Steve Young? He had to fill the shoes of a living legend, but he was more than ready to carry that torch.
And he silenced every last doubter on the world's biggest stage. In Super Bowl 29, Steve Young was just unbelievable, throwing a record 6 touchdown passes. With that performance, he finally got the monkey off his back, escaped Montana's shadow, and brought home the team's 5th and final title of that incredible era.
So, when it was all said and done, what did this dynasty leave behind? It's more than just a bunch of trophies. It's a legacy that's literally written into the NFL record books forever.
Just think about some of these records for a second. Winning 18 straight games on the road, that's insane focus. Leading the entire NFL in scoring for 4 straight seasons, that's consistency on another level. And in one Super Bowl, they dropped 55 points and 8 touchdowns, records that still stand today. They didn't just win games, they completely redefined what was possible.
Which really brings us to the big question, right? When you stack it all up, the innovation, the sustained dominance, the sheer star power, you gotta ask yourself, was this the greatest sports dynasty of all time? Well, that's a debate for the ages.